Welcome back to Only Talk Sports, where we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, we're starting the previews and predictions for week 2 in college football. And what better way to start than the game of the year, the way Fox is hyping it up? Alabama at Texas. It's going to be a very interesting game. A lot of people think Texas can keep it close. Let's find out. Alabama, they went 13 and 2 last year. They lost to Georgia in the national championship game. They played really, really well, but they fell short. John Mechie got hurt. Jameson Williams got hurt. And then they just fell short. Nick Saban, he's probably the best coach in college football. Very elite. They're probably the number one program in college football as well. They're just an elite program. Bryce Young at quarterback, Heisman winner last year, beat out C.J. Stroud and all the other players that were there. He's a great player. You saw in week 1 when they beat Utah State 55-0. He ran for 100 yards. He looked calm in the pocket, even though Alabama's offensive line was maybe not as elite as it's been in the past. He was still getting the job done, even though Utah State's not a very good team. And he threw for over 300 yards. He played great. Running back Jahmyr Gibbs transferred from Georgia Tech. He's not as good as the backs they've had in the past, but he is good and very solid, and he's going to help out in the run game. Maybe he's not, like I said, Najee Harris. Definitely not Derrick Henry, but he is solid. Ja'Cory Brooks at wide receiver. They got a lot of other receivers too. Tyler Harrell, another one for a transfer from Louisville, but Ja'Cory Brooks and others, they got a great receiving core, not the quintet that they had a few years ago, but they're still solid at the wide receiver position. They did get an offensive line transfer, Tyler Steen from Vanderbilt. Probably Vanderbilt's best lineman last year, and he's trying to help Alabama's offensive line improve. And then obviously on the defense, they got tons of players. Will Anderson, he's a potential Heisman candidate from the defensive position. He's a stud. He plays great every possession. He's playing, trying to sack the quarterback, stop the run. He is a fantastic player, one of the hardest workers in all of college football. A defensive back, Kool-Aid McKinstry, one of the coolest names in college football. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a great defensive back. Henry To'oTo'o, linebacker, transfer from Tennessee last year. He's a pretty solid player. Not elite, but solid. Defensive back transfer, Eli Ricks from LSU. He's a good corner as well. So they got two very good corners in Kool-Aid McKinstry and Eli Ricks. Safety, Jordan Battle. All these guys are going to be NFL players. They're all really good, and these are just the starters. They got backups that are good as well. And tight end Cameron too, if he's healthy. I don't think he's going to be available for this game. However, on the Texas side, Texas went 5-7 last year. They were a disaster. They lost to Kansas for the first time in like 15 years. Kansas even beat them, and they just looked uninspired. One of their defensive coach was so mad he was basically just cussing out his players on the bus, and someone taped it. It was just a disaster last year. And Steve Sarkisian's first year as Texas's head coach, coming in from offensive coordinator from Alabama. This is interesting because they're playing Alabama. He's going to want to beat Alabama, and they even have former Alabama players on the team. It's just going to be very interesting to see if Texas can get it done. Some people think they can get it done. Other people think it's going to be a blowout. I think where a lot of the potential upset ability is because Alabama played at Texas A&M last year, and they lost 41-38 on a field goal. Quinn Ewers at quarterback, obviously, potential, everybody's saying Heisman hopeful. A transfer from Ohio State. He didn't even play, and he made $1 million, which is funny. And Texas gets him, and that forces Casey Thompson out to Nebraska. And Hudson Card, their backup quarterback is not, he's still their backup quarterback. Quinn Ewers, he's really solid. Louisiana Monroe, they played him last week, and they beat him 52-14. Again, not a good opponent. We don't know how good Louisiana Monroe is. Probably not a very good team. So, don't know how good Texas is from that performance, but he played what you would want him to play. It's not like he played bad, so he played really good. So, that's good for Texas fans. Bijan Robinson at running back, he's very good. He's, I'm not saying he's on the Heisman level because, again, it's tough for running backs to win the Heisman, but he was nothing but solid for Texas last year and in week 1 over Louisiana Monroe. They also have running back Keelan Robinson that transferred from Alabama, which Nick Saban wanted him when he left because they needed more backs last year, but he's a good player. Xavier Worthy at wide receiver is an elite wide receiver. He has a freshman last year. He was a stud. He played fantastic, but and all of the programs wanted him, but he's an elite receiver, and Quinn Ewers is going to be able to use him and get him the ball a lot. They also have a Jai Hall, a wide receiver transfer from Alabama. He's not going to, he is able to play. He might, people thought he wasn't going to be able to play, but he has not had his head in the game. He's been getting in trouble a lot at Alabama and now at Texas, so we'll see if his head's in the game. Jaleel Billingsley will not be able to play at tight end. He was a transfer from Alabama as well. He's in trouble. He's suspended for 6 weeks, so that is not good news for Texas. On the defensive side of the ball, they got defensive line Moro Ajomo, very good defensive lineman, huge man. They got a defensive back, Deshaun Jameson. He's a really good player. Defensive lineman T'Vondre Sweat, and linebacker Prince Dorbah. So they got a good team too. I mean, Texas has always had a top 10, 15 talent roster, but the problem is they ain't winning, and that is why Tom Herman got fired. That's why Charlie Strong got fired. So Steve Sarkisian, he knows he's got to win. He's got to win 9 games this year. He knows that with the talent on this roster, because most coaches could get 8 or 9 or maybe even 10 wins with this roster. But is it enough to beat Alabama? I do not think it is. I think that it's going to be a close game. It's at home, but I don't think Texas is at the level of Texas A&M. It took Jimbo Fisher into year 6 at Texas A&M to finally beat Alabama. I don't think in year 2 and trying to rebuild that Texas with Steve Sarkisian is going to be able to pull the upset. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Alabama is eventually going to pull away and win this game around 42-24. Alabama could win by more. It could be a close game, and Texas could potentially pull it off. It's a 20-point spread. I think it's going to be a little bit underneath that again. I think Alabama's going to win 42-24 by 18 points. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see some more sports content. Comment down below what you think about this game, whether Texas is going to win or Alabama's going to win by more or less. Like this video, and I will see you next time.